Okay, very good morning to all of you. So yesterday we finished the second phase of glycolysis. I know that we are left with the discussion of the regulation of glycolysis, but after I gave a thought, I thought that regulation of both glycolysis and TCA, if discussed together, will give you an overall picture of how both the central metabolic pathways are regulated. So we will discuss both regulations together once we finish TCA. So what we will do instead today, we will step into our next pathway, which is the Entner-Diotroff pathway, which is abbreviated as the ED pathway. So you already have an idea about this because in the first section of this unit, we discussed how some organisms, instead of following glycolysis, they follow the ED pathway. And in ED pathway, also they form two molecules of pyruvic acid, but the process is slightly different. Some of the steps are going to be very, very similar as to what it was in the case of glycolysis, but some steps are, very unique to the ED pathway. Okay, and that is the reason why the carbon dioxide, which is evolved during the process of ED and glycolysis, you see that the carbon atoms from which these carbon dioxides are released, they are basically different. And that's how we normally recognize the pathway that an organism follows, whether it is glycolysis or whether it is ED pathway. Okay. So in ED pathway, there are few initial steps which are basically different, which we will focus on. So I have put both the presentation as well as the whiteboard. So we will start with understanding Entner-Diotroff pathway in Pseudomonas sacrophylla. Okay, so Pseudomonas sacrophylla is that organism in which Entner-Diotroff pathway was studied for the very first time. So it has been the model organism for the study or for the deduction of the ED pathway. Okay, so now let us understand this particular pathway step by step. Okay, so I will put up the reaction on the whiteboard and then we can note it down as we regularly do it. Okay, so have a look at the whiteboard right now. So to begin with, we have again glucose only as our substrate, and the first reaction will be quite similar. Okay, the first reaction wherein you convert glucose to glucose 6 phosphate, that's going to be exactly the same. Okay, hexokinase will be involved and glucose will be converted to glucose 6 phosphate. So that process is going to remain the same. The difference in the process begins from glucose 6 phosphate. Okay, so let us see what the basic difference is. So uh, right now what I have with me is going to be glucose 6 phosphate. Okay, so I'm writing the structure down for the same. This is my glucose 6 phosphate. Okay, now here what I'm going to do is I am going to carry out an oxidation step. Okay, you very well know what is oxidation, right? Oxidation means removal of hydrogen. Okay, and you know that whenever we remove hydrogen, there has to be an acceptor of the hydrogen. Now, what we did in glycolysis in oxidative phosphorylation, when we removed hydrogen, we saw that there was something called as NAD, which used to accept the hydrogens and it used to get converted into NADH and H plus, right? But here we do not have NAD, rather we have something called as NADP, which does a similar task. It is going to accept the hydrogens, becomes NADPH and H plus. Now, what combines with the enzyme? What functions with the enzyme? Whether it is NAD, whether it is NADP, whether it is FAD, this depends on the enzyme coenzyme compatibility. Okay, please understand that these coenzymes also have to go and bind themselves to a specific site on the enzyme. So obviously, compatibility is going to matter. Like you say that substrate is very specific for the enzyme. Similarly, the same applies for the cofactors and the coenzyme also. Okay. So here also you have to understand that while you are removing hydrogens, you are having NADP as the hydrogen acceptor, forming NADPH and H plus. Now the question arises that where are we removing these hydrogens from? Okay, ये hydrogens जो NADP accept कर रहा है, ये कहाँ से आने वाला है, ये question. So please understand that in this process, along with removing the hydrogen, we are also going to add a water molecule. Now you will understand why we are going to do that. The reason of doing this is that one of the hydrogens that is going to be removed is going to come from this carbon, the aldehyde group. Okay, so I'm going to remove the hydrogen from there. And the second hydrogen is going to come from water. So that's our NADPH and H plus. And the remaining OH group is what is going to be added over here. So it becomes COOH. Okay, so it becomes COOH. And the rest of the part will remain exactly the same. No change at all. So one hydrogen you removed from that first carbon. Okay, another hydrogen came from the water molecule, right? And OH was substituted at the first carbon such that you form a carboxyl group. So now the compound that you have here is 6-phospho because we have a phosphate group at the 6th position. Gluconate. You can also call it as 6-phosphogluconic acid. Okay, or 6-phosphogluconate. Now you very well know that whenever you are removing hydrogen, whenever it is the process of oxidation, I have told you that the enzyme name is fixed. Do you remember what's the enzyme name for oxidation? I've told you that it will always remain the same. What is that name? Anyone? It very well depicts what that reaction does. Removal of hydrogen. So what will be the enzyme name?
Dehydrogen.
Dehydrogenase.
Very good. So we
Dehydrogen.
have dehydrogenase. And I've also told you about the prefix. I've told you that for oxidation, the prefix is always going to be the substrate's name as it is from which you're removing the hydrogen, right? So here in this case, my complete enzyme name will become what? Glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Okay, is this very clear to all of you? So what have we done in this process?
Yes,
We have removed hydrogen. The hydrogen is coming from the first carbon and one hydrogen is coming from the water molecule. And instead of that hydrogen, we are substituting the hydroxyl group of water such that we form a carboxyl group. And you get 6-phosphogluconic acid. NADP acts as acceptor of hydrogen. It forms NADPH and H plus. We said that as it's oxidation where you're removing hydrogen, the name of the enzyme will be dehydrogenase, and the substrate from which you are removing the hydrogen, that will become your prefix. So it becomes glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Okay. So now we will see what's the next reaction. Okay, we have 6-phosphogluconate. So what are we going to do with this particular structure next? So the next step is wherein I am going to dehydrate this structure. What does that mean? I'm going to remove a water molecule. Okay. Now the question is, this water molecule is going to come from which carbon atom? So we are going to remove this water molecule from the second carbon atom, that is from this point. So this hydroxyl, this hydrogen, okay, will be removed, okay, and along with that, we also will be getting rid of this hydroxyl group. Okay, so one water molecule is released, and this oxygen is going to be shifted over here. So it's not going to be a single step process because you will be removing the hydrogen hydroxyl groups and there will be rearrangements taking place, shifting this up. Okay, now there is a problem that there are two different mechanisms that have been exhibited. One mechanism is wherein they say that these two groups are going to be eliminated and oxygen is shifted. But Voigt specifically says that you remove this hydrogen, you remove this hydroxyl group, and this hydrogen is shifted. So both of these mechanisms have been elucidated, wherein either you shift the hydrogen down or you shift the oxygen up. Okay. So the product that you get, I'm going to write it over here because I don't want to shift it to another page. Carboxyl group is as it is. Okay. I'm going to keep an oxygen here is C double bond O, CH2. So hydrogen and hydroxyl group gone. This oxygen has been shifted up. So now I'm left with CH2. Okay, then you have CHOH, CHOH, and CH2O phosphate. Now, what is this compound? Okay, this compound has a long name. It is called 2-keto. Okay, why 2-keto? Because here we have a ketonic group. Okay, 3-deoxy. Why? Because no oxygen group is present on the third carbon. So 3-deoxy. तो जो ऑक्सीजन ग्रुप था वो वहां से एलिमिनेट कर दिया या ऊपर शिफ्ट कर दिया. So 3-deoxy. 6-phospho, because we have a phosphate group on the sixth carbon. Gluconate. So 2-keto, because now you have a ketonic group there on the second carbon. 3-deoxy, because you eliminated an oxygen there. And 6-phosphogluconate, because you have a phosphate group on the sixth carbon and it's gluconic acid. So the abbreviation for this compound is KDPG, keto-deoxyphosphogluconate, KDPG. That's the abbreviation that's used for this particular long name compound. Now the question is, what is going to be the enzyme? Okay, so because you are carrying out dehydration, the name is dehydratase, and the substrate from which you are removing water is going to be written as it is, which is 6-phosphogluconate. So 6-phosphogluconate dehydratase is your enzyme. So let us repeat. What did we do? We got eliminated this hydrogen in this hydroxyl group. The oxygen was shifted up. So now we have COOH, C double bond O, CH2. Rest of the part remains the same. So we have a ketonic group on the second carbon, so 2-keto. The oxygen group was removed from the third carbon, so 3-deoxy. We have a phosphate group on the sixth carbon, so 6-phosphogluconic acid. Abbreviation is KDPG. As you have removed a water molecule, the enzyme is dehydratase. The substrate from which you removed it, according to that, you call it as 6-phosphogluconate dehydratase. Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any notes the reaction down from the presentation? I have put up the slide already. Okay, great. So let's go ahead. Let's see what happens after KDPG is formed. Okay. So after KDPG is formed, something very similar is going to take place as it used to happen in case of glycolysis. In cleavage reaction of glycolysis, we used to cleave fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Do you remember what was the enzyme there? Wherein we used to split that 6-carbon compound to two molecules, two different compounds having 3 molecules each. One was your 3-PEGAL and the another was DHAP. So do you remember the enzyme working there to split fructose 1,6-bisphosphate?
Aldolase.
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 Very good. Okay. So right now what I have with me is KDPG, which looks like this. Now I'm going to cleave this. This is a 6-carbon compound. I'm going to cleave this. Okay. So I'm going to cleave it at this point. Okay. The enzyme that functions over here is an aldolase. Called as KDPG aldolase. Okay. So now as I split this, one of the hydrogens, okay, that is this particular hydrogen, is going to be shifted up so that my product which is formed is going to be COOH, C double bond O, CH3. What is this compound? We have seen this compound in glycolysis. It's a 3-carbon compound. What is this compound?
Pyruvic acid.
Pyruvic acid.
Very good. Pyruvate. So see, directly in 3 steps, I have converted glucose 6-phosphate to pyruvate. जो glycolysis में मुझे करीब करीब 9-10 steps लगे. यहाँ पे 3 step में वो काम हुआ. अभी सेकंड कंपाउंड क्या बन रहा है? यहाँ से अगर मैंने हाइड्रोजन ऊपर शिफ्ट कर दिया तो मेरे पास एक एल्डिहाइड ग्रुप बचेगा. CHO बचेगा, CHOH, COH. Now this is nothing but glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate or 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde. That's nothing but your 3-PGAL. Okay. 3-PGAL से एक और पायरुवेट बन सकता है ना? The entire second phase of glycolysis. Oxidative phosphorylation करोगे तो 3-PGAL will get converted into 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid. Right?
सर
Yes.
सर नीचे KDPG में CH2O फॉस्फेट आएगा ना?
हाँ, sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. So CH2O. Okay, which you. Yes. So, where was I? Yeah. With this 3-PGAL, if you are going to carry out the entire second phase of glycolysis, that is, you will have oxidative phosphorylation. That oxidative phosphorylation will give you 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid. Then you carry out dephosphorylation, that gives you 3-phosphoglyceric acid. You carry out isomerization, you get 2-phosphoglyceric acid. Carry out a dehydration, you get PEPA. Final dephosphorylation gives you pyruvate acid. So which means that this molecule will go into second phase of glycolysis. All reactions like second phase will happen there. And that will give you 1 pyruvate, and 1 pyruvate is already formed. Is that making sense to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Now,
sir.
but remember, there are going to be a lot of difference in energetics, right? Why difference in energetics? Because in second phase of glycolysis, we used to form ATP molecules. We used to form that NADH which goes in ATP. So there's going to be a lot of difference in the number of ATPs that are going to be generated, isn't it? So you will have only 2 ATP molecules generated in the second phase instead of 4. because you don't have two molecules of 3-p-gal going there, you have just one molecule. And instead of 2 NADH, you will have just one NADH. Are you understanding this? Why there is a reduction in number of ATPs? Is that making sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, pay attention to me very carefully. This particular compound, hence, may not be formed by phosphorylation, which means that hexokinase step. Now, what does this mean? This means that glucose 6-phosphate may be formed directly by the process of your phosphotransferase system, which we had discussed in the initial phases of breakdown. Do you remember? I told you that wherein there is an HPR, the H protein. Do you remember that? Which is going to take up the phosphate group and transfer that phosphate group to sugars, so that the moment they are being transported into the cell, they are being immediately phosphorylated. याद है तुम लोगों को वो phosphotransferase system जहाँ पे हमने बोला था कि H protein is going to take up the phosphate group from PEPA and transfer that phosphate group to a sugar that is coming inside the cell. तो यहाँ पे ये phosphotransferase system का significance क्या होगा? तो सबसे पहले तो जब आप ये यूनिट 1 में पढ़ोगे बायोकेमिस्ट्री में, membrane transport में, that time you will come to know that phosphotransferase system is being done because the organism wants to separate glucose molecules or separate the sugar molecules which are going to have the fate of metabolism. क्या मतलब है इसका? अगर एक बार शुगर को फॉस्फोराइलेट कर दिया, उसको ग्लूकोज 6-phosphate तुमने बना दिया, it is directly going to enter the process of metabolism. It's not going to get stored. So you are saving glucose molecules from being stored because you need them right now to be utilized for generating ATP molecules. That's one reason why phosphotransferase system exists. But in this case, there is another significance of these organisms having phosphotransferase system. What is that? See, already the number of ATPs being generated is going to be low now, because you are generating only 2 ATPs in all by substrate level phosphorylation instead of 4. Barabar. So then in this case, I can save an ATP in the process of phosphorylation by not using an ATP over here, and you depending on the phosphotransferase system. Right? क्योंकि normally जब हम glucose to glucose 6-phosphate करते हैं तो एक ATP यूज करते हैं, तो मुझे वो ATP बचाने का, तो कैसे बचाएंगे वो हम? By using the phosphotransferase system. Another thing is that you also have an NADPH generated in this process, which will also go to ETC. Okay, and that can yield us ATP molecules. Okay, so while calculating, you will have to keep this difference in mind. If someone is going to tell you to calculate the bioenergetics, NADPH gives you the same moles of ATP. But let me tell you that most of the organisms, they won't channelize this to ETC because NADPH is a very good reducing agent. And reducing agents are required in anabolic reactions in biosynthesis. So instead of channelizing it to ETC, most of the NADPH is going to be used in the process of anabolism only. And hence the overall energy yield of ED pathway is always low as compared to what it is in glycolysis. Because NADPH is going to be used up for the process of anabolism, and it's not going to be, the molecule which gives you ATP. So ultimately, you are left with only one NADH, which will give you around 2.5 ATPs in ETC and 2 ATPs. That's it. So that's giving me what, like 4.5 ATPs? Barabar? Are you understanding it?
Yes, sir.
Do you want me to repeat it? See,
Can you
NADPH
please repeat?
is a best reducing agent. It's going to donate hydrogen during biosynthesis process. Organisms produce NADPH itself so that it can be used in biosynthetic reaction, in anabolism. Because you will see in lot of anabolic reactions, NADPH is used as the reducing agent. It donates hydrogen and helps in the process of biosynthesis. So it's not going to be the molecule which gives you ATP in ETC. No. Organisms are synthesizing this NADPH so that they can use it as a reducing agent in biosynthetic reaction. So what am I left with as energy molecules over here? Two ATP molecules, which are produced from this 3p gal. Where is that? Yeah, this 3p gal, when it goes into second phase of glycolysis, that's going to give me two ATPs, right? And one NADH. One NADH accounts for how much? 2.5 ATPs plus two ATPs. So what is the total that I have? Does this now make sense?
Sir, can you repeat again?
I don't know what kind of rocket science is involved over here. Anyone who has understood this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Karan, you are sending only one molecule of 3p gal into glycolysis, into the second phase. For this, you should know what happens in glycolysis. You have two ATP generation steps. So two ATPs will be generated. I'll not generate four. Why not four? Because I have just one molecule of 3p gas. So I generate two ATPs there. And instead of two NADH, I generate one NADH. Each NADH gives me 2.5 ATP. Add it up. That's your ATP gain. What is the rocket science here? Yeah, obviously you should know
Yes,
what
sir.
happens in glycolysis to know this.
Yes,
And we
sir.
said that
Understood.
this NADPH cannot be utilized for ATP generation because this acts as a reducing agent in biosynthesis process, which means that it will donate hydrogen for anabolic reaction. So you don't have this available at all, right? So then what am I left with? The total gain that I have is of 4.5 ATPs only, instead of what it could have been in case of glycolysis, wherein I had around gain of 7 ATPs. That's a huge difference. Okay. Are you people there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
I had a doubt.
Cool.
As you said yesterday, that NADH is not 3 ATP, but it's 2.5.
Hmm.
So, what about FADH then? Is it 2?
1.5.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So when we do the entire bioenergetics calculation, at the end हम लोग पूरा calculation करते हैं कि अगर एक ग्लूकोज मॉलिक्यूल ग्लाइकोलिसिस टीसीए और ईटीसी ये तीनों पाथवेज से गया तो कितने एटीपीज बनेंगे. तो वहां पर जब हम डिस्कस करते हैं कि NADH और FADH2 जब ETC में जाता है तो we take it into account that every FADH2 molecule is going to be equivalent to 1.5 ATP's energy and NADH will be equivalent to 2.5 ATP's energy. Okay, so you do all the calculations according to that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, and I think you have a separate unit on ETC, so you'll be learning about that in ETC, that how second unit is based on electron transport chain. So you'll be learning about that there. Okay. छाप लो ये रिएक्शन फटाक से. आई थिंक दिस इज लेफ्ट टू राइट ना. ये वाला रिएक्शन लिख लो प्रेजेंटेशन में. Nikita, meanwhile, can you just confirm that Saili, Sarvesh, and Vaishnavi, these three are absent, right?
So Vaishnavi is absent. Saili is also absent, and yes, Sarvesh
No,
is also
Saili is
absent.
there. I can
Oh,
see
she's
Saili
there.
is
Yes,
there.
sir. She's there. Sarvesh is absent. Yes, sir. Sir, I tried
Mm,
contacting him yesterday, but he's not replying.
okay. I
Yes,
don't know
sir.
what the problem is, but I feel कुछ लोग disconnect हो रहे हैं शायद इसलिए मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा. People are getting disconnected if I'm not wrong.
Yes, sir. People are.
Okay, ठीक है. Okay, so the next pathway that we have, this is all about ED, but before we go to ED, yes, just quickly going through this, this is not new for you. We have discussed this, that if the organism is carrying out EMP and if the organism is carrying out ED, the carbon dioxide that is evolved in the complete degradation of glucose, the carbons from which they evolve from glucose are different. For example, in case of EMP, this is how two pyruvate molecules are formed. You can see in the presentation. Okay, so you can see that carbon dioxide will be evolved from the carboxyl groups, and that's being formed from the third and fourth carbon of glucose in EMP. So that's why the carbon dioxide released in glycolysis is coming from the third and the fourth carbon of glucose. But in ED, you can see that the carboxyl groups formed are from the first and the fourth carbon of glucose. Okay, so instead of third and fourth, it is first and fourth. So in ED, the carbon dioxide originates from the first and fourth carbon, while in glycolysis, it originates from the third and fourth carbon. You have already discussed this earlier, and we are just going through over it again here. Can you tell me the technique which you used to study this that time? What was the name of the technique?
Radio respirometry.
Very good. Radio respirometry. Okay, great. So now we move to the next pathway. But before that, I think I'll just quickly show you the reference for the ED process. Just wait. Yes. So ED, you are going to refer from Gottschalk. Okay, so the theory as well as the reactions are very well elucidated in Gottschalk. So you are going to refer the same for your uh, studies. Okay, so we are here on HMP pathway. HMP is a very significant and a very elaborate pathway. Probably it's going to eat up our next entire week, wherein we will be discussing about the two phases of HMP, because there are two separate phases of HMP. HMP is called as hexose monophosphate pathway, which is its full form, or it's also referred to as the triple P, which is pentose phosphate pathway. So you either call it as hexose monophosphate pathway, or you call it as the pentose phosphate pathway. Now, it is very interesting a question that hexose and pentose, these are two different things. So why are we in one name referring to it as hexose monophosphate pathway, and in the other we are calling it as the pentose phosphate pathway? So you will see that as we start discussing the pathway, you will realize why hexose and pentose, these two terms are used. You can also call it as the phosphogluconate pathway, because here also you form phosphogluconate, and from that, some significant products are going to be generated. So that's the reason why you can also refer to it as phosphogluconate pathway. Okay. Now, please understand that in this process, the products that you get are very, very significant. The products are pentoses. Okay. So this is the pathway where you are forming pentoses from hexoses. So now you understand why you call it as hexose monophosphate pathway, because that's the starting point for the process. And why you call it as pentose phosphate pathway, because your products, your end products are phosphopentoses. Okay, and along with that you generate NADPH, and I've already told you the significance of NADPH in ED pathway, wherein NADPH is a very, very significant molecule for biosynthetic processes, where it is used as a reducing agent, where it donates hydrogen to carry out specific biosynthetic reactions. So pentoses and NADPH, as they are formed in this particular process, this is considered to be a very, very significant pathway. Now, please understand that all organisms may not exhibit this. Okay, specific organisms are going to exhibit this particular pathway, and this is basically carried out when the organisms want to generate pentoses and NADPH because they are needed for biosynthetic processes. Now, you will say that pentoses bana ke kya fayda hone wala hai? So we will see that as we go ahead. So, even when you talk about humans, let me tell you that there are different parts in our body as well, wherein pentoses are very, very, very significant. Okay, whether it is intestine, whether it is the skin, whether it is your muscles and bones, you have to understand that pentoses are very significant. Okay, and we need to understand that pentoses are significant because they are needed for nucleic acid synthesis, because you know that when you talk about RNA or DNA, the sugar which is involved there is a pentose. Okay, so for synthesizing that, HMP could be very significant because you will be able to synthesize one of the components of your nucleotides, which is a pentose sugar. Other than that, you talk about your energy currency, which is ATP. Again, there you need ribose, which is a pentose. So again, you require a pentose sugar there. Other than that, also for synthesizing NAD, there is need of pentose. FAD, again, there is need of pentose. And even your coenzyme A, which you very commonly see in Krebs cycle as acetyl coenzyme A. So that coenzyme A is also going to be synthesized from pentoses. So we need to understand that pentoses are precursors for several of the metabolically significant molecules in the cell, and that's the reason why having adequate level of pentoses in the cell is crucial. And HMP is that pathway which is going to help us achieve that significant level of pentoses. If you talk about the significance of NADPH, we need to understand that there are two significant reasons why NADPH levels in the cell is necessary. Number one is reductive biosynthesis, wherein we have already said that it's going to act as reducing agent, for example, in fatty acid synthesis in your liver, adipose tissues, and even lactating mammary glands. For fatty acid synthesis, NADPH is used. Also for cholesterol synthesis, and from cholesterol you form a lot of steroidal hormones, okay, like your sex hormone. So these molecules, when they're synthesized in liver, adrenal gland, and gonads, you need NADPH molecules. So several biosynthetic reactions will have a strong requirement of NADPH, and that's the reason why organisms will want to have a significant amount of NADPH inside the cell. Secondly, NADPH also helps prevent oxidative damage. You know that metabolic processes wherein a lot of harmful secondary metabolites are synthesized, right? That includes a lot of reactive oxygen species. So NADPH could help in preventing the damage that is caused by these reactive oxygen species. How? We will be seeing that with a specific case as we go ahead in the discussion of HMP. Okay. So in erythrocytes, that's RBCs, and even the cells of lens and cornea of your eyes, there is a lot of scare of oxidative damage, which could affect the functionality of these cells. So NADPH plays a very important role in scavenging those ROS, that is reactive oxygen species in these cells, such that they are not able to cause any harm to these cells. Okay, so that's the reason why pentoses and NADPH have so many significant points in terms of their functionality that HMP becomes a very significant process. So as I said, that HMP is divided into two phases. It has an oxidative phase and it has a non-oxidative phase. Okay, the oxidative phase is comparatively very simple, not too complicated to understand, but the non-oxidative phase is a little tricky. Okay, it takes time, but once you understand it, let me tell you that a lot of metabolic pathways ahead in the journey of your learning of biochemistry will become much more simpler. Okay, especially when you will be learning photosynthesis in the next semester. If you know HMP, Calvin cycle will be an easy job. Calvin cycle का जो regeneration part होता है RUBP का, that will become an easy job if you understand the non-oxidative phase of HMP.
So we will dedicate good amount of lectures for it. Maybe we will need around 2 lectures for the next entire week, and maybe a lecture after that will go in understanding what is the non-oxidative phase and how it functions. Okay, so uska jo functionality part hai, it's not necessarily something which is a part of your curriculum. That क्योंकि जैसे अभी हमने देखा कि काफी सारे रिएक्शंस होते हैं जिसमें इंटरमीडिएट्स बनते हैं. ओके, नॉन ऑक्सीडेटिव फेज भी ऐसा ही है जिसमें छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स है जो ओवरऑल रिएक्शन दिखाते वक्त कोई भी बुक्स हमको नहीं बताता. तुम लेनिंजर खोल लो, गॉटशॉक खोल लो, कहीं पे भी तुमको उसका एग्जैक्ट मैकेनिज्म क्या है रिएक्शन का वो नहीं दिखाया जाता. एक ही बुक है जो वो मैकेनिज्म दिखाता है, विच इज वोएट. ओके, सो हम पहले ओवरऑल जनरल प्रोसेस पढ़ेंगे नॉन ऑक्सीडेटिव फेज का. Okay, and we will understand that what exactly is being formed and what are the enzymes and stuff. But that doesn't satisfy your curiosity. You always want to know that what is happening there exactly. वो reaction जब तुम देखोगे तो तुमको समझ में आएगा मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ. Okay, तो वो समझने के लिए we will go to Voigt and we will try and understand the mechanism. Okay, so we will first start with oxidative phase in our next lecture. We will finish the oxidative phase, which is very simple, and then we will step into the non-oxidative phase. Okay, I again request you to start reading these, start preparing for these. I have told you your job of making the schematic. I don't know how many of you opened the website. The link for schematic submission is already out there. Okay, so please see to it that you are making your schematics and submitting there, and start studying for it, because next week you will write a test on glycolysis. Okay, so that will be a part of your internal evaluation. So I will be sending you an official email today that you have a 20 marks test on glycolysis. It's going to be a return test. It's not an MCQ test. I'm repeating here. It's a return test. It's not an MCQ test. So you should know the reactions, know the theory behind it, for which I've told you that the reference is Conen-Stumpf. Okay, so Conen-Stumpf ka scan part is already there in your Google Drive, right? So please start reading, start preparing for it, because next Tuesday you will have a 20 marks test for that. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.